that somehow weren't shaking. For the inconvenience, I'll be right back with our best vintage. She turned toward the bar and nearly collided with Dominic Santoro. He stood inches from table 9, close enough that Maya could smell his cologne, something expensive that mixed cedar and smoke. His gaze moved past her to the anniversary couple, lingering on the woman with an intensity that made Maya's breath catch. "Genevieve," he said quietly. The woman's face drained of color. The man beside her, silver-haired, distinguished, oblivious, looked up with the polite confusion of someone who'd been interrupted during a private moment. "I'm sorry. Do we know you?" the man asked. Dominic's smile didn't reach his eyes. "Your wife and I are old friends, aren't we, Jen?" The champagne flutes felt impossibly heavy in Maya's hands. The woman, Genevieve, had gone rigid in her seat, her fingers clutching the edge of the table hard enough that her knuckles whitened. "I don't think," the husband began. "Table 9, Dominic continued, his voice conversational, almost pleasant. "Interesting choice. It was always your lucky number." He reached past Maya with deliberate casualness and picked up the man's water glass, swirling the clear liquid as if examining wine. "Though I notice your husband isn't drinking the champagne. Just you." The restaurant's ambient noise, clinking silverware, murmured conversations, soft jazz from the piano in the corner, seemed to fade into white noise. Maya stood frozen between them, still holding the poisoned champagne, understanding crystallizing like ice in her veins. Not his wife, her husband. Genevieve's voice came out strangled. "Dominic, please." "Please what?" His tone remained mild, but something predatory had entered his posture. "Please don't make a scene at your anniversary dinner. Please pretend we didn't have dinner at this exact table 3 months ago, before you decided to disappear without a word." The husband's confusion was shifting into something else. Suspicion. Anger. "Genevieve, what is he talking about?" Maya should leave. Should take the poisoned champagne to the bar, call the police, stay out of whatever complicated, dangerous situation was unfolding. Instead, she found herself speaking. "Sir, perhaps this conversation would be better continued outside." Dominic's attention shifted to her for the first time since he'd stood. Really looked at her. His eyes were dark brown, almost black in the candlelight, and they assessed her with the same intensity he'd used on the champagne bubbles, cataloging details, analyzing threat levels, calculating odds. Then, louder, to Genevieve. "Your champagne has been recalled. Manufacturing defect. Could have been fatal." The emphasis on the last word made Genevieve flinch. "Fortunate that your waitress noticed?" He turned and walked toward the exit with the unhurried confidence of a man who knew people would move out of his way. They did. Even the hostess stepped back as he passed, some instinct warning her not to ask if he'd enjoyed his meal. Maya stood motionless until her manager appeared at her elbow. "What the hell was that about?" I... I'm not sure." The lie came automatically. "He knew the woman at table 9, I think." "Get those glasses to the bar. Now." His voice carried an edge she'd never heard before. "And stay away from Santoro's table. I'll handle his bill." Maya nodded, moving toward the bar on legs that felt disconnected from her body. Behind her, she heard Genevieve's husband demanding explanations in a voice rising toward shouting. The elegant anniversary dinner dissolving into recriminations and accusations that would probably end the marriage even if the poison hadn't. The bartender, Marcuse, took the champagne flutes from her hands with a frown. "These, the recalled ones?" "Test them," Maya said quietly. "Please, just test them." Something in her voice made him pause. He'd worked at Laveau's for 15 years, had seen enough to recognize when to ask questions and when to just do what was asked. "Go take your break," he said instead. "I'll handle it." The alley behind Laveau's smelled like garbage and jasmine, that peculiarly New Orleans combination that shouldn't work, but somehow did. Maya leaned against the brick wall, her hands finally starting to shake now that no one was watching. She'd just interfered in a mafia boss's personal life, saved his ex-lover from poisoning herself, exposed an assassination attempt, or a suicide, or whatever the hell that had been. And Dominic Santoro knew her face now, knew she'd understood what was happening, knew she'd acted. The question was whether that made her useful or dangerous. The answer came 10 minutes later when Marcus found her in the alley, his face pale in the security light's harsh glow. "Police are on their way," he said. "Those champagne flutes? Loaded with oleander extract. Enough to kill someone in under an hour." He paused, studying her face. "How did you know?" Maya shook her head. She couldn't explain the instinct that had made her notice, the way the bubbles had moved just slightly wrong, the same intuition that helped her read customers and anticipate needs and survive 3 years in an industry that chewed up most people in 3 months. "Lucky guess," she whispered. "Lucky for someone," Marcus agreed. "The woman at table 9 is losing her mind, claiming someone must have switched her glass, that she didn't order that champagne, that it's all a misunderstanding." He lit a cigarette, his hand steady despite the night's drama. "Her husband called the police. They're treating it as attempted murder." "And Santoro?" "Gone before anyone could ask him questions." Marcus took a long drag, exhaling smoke into the humid night air. "Though I'd bet money he'll want to ask you some questions." Maya's stomach clenched. "Why me?" "Because you're the one who noticed. And in his world, people who notice things are either assets or liabilities." Marcus dropped the cigarette, crushing it under his heel. "Just be careful, Maya. Men like Dominic Santoro don't forget debts. And they don't forgive interference." The police took 2 hours to process the scene. Detectives interviewed staff, photographed the champagne bottle, collected the glasses Maya had removed from table 9. She answered their questions with careful honesty. Tell the truth, but not all of it. Yes, she'd noticed the champagne looked wrong. No, she didn't know the couple. No, she'd never seen the man who'd approached their table before. The last part was technically true. She'd served Dominic Santoro dozens of times, but seen implied recognition, familiarity, and knowledge. She knew enough to know she knew nothing at all. Genevieve Marchant, that was her name, according to the detective's questions, had been taken to the hospital for observation despite not having consumed any of the poisoned champagne. Her husband, Richard Marchant, owner of a shipping company operating out of the port of New Orleans, had been taken to the police station for a voluntary statement. The detective interviewing Maya, a woman in her 40s with tired eyes and a wedding ring worn thin, closed her notebook with a sigh. "You did good work tonight," she said. "Probably saved that woman's life." Maya nodded, accepting the praise without comment. "Though I'm curious how a waitress spots oleander poisoning in champagne bubbles." The detective's tone remained casual, but her eyes had sharpened with the question. "That's pretty specialized knowledge." "I watch a lot of crime shows," Maya offered with a slight smile. "And I'm pre-med. Biology major at Tulane. Poisons came up in my pharmacology elective." Both true statements, though they didn't explain the instinct that had made her look closer at that champagne flute. Some things couldn't be explained, only acted upon. The detective seemed to accept this, or at least decided it wasn't worth pursuing. She handed Maya a business card. "If you remember anything else, give me a call. And if anyone approaches you about tonight, anyone at all, I want to know about it." The emphasis on anyone made it clear she meant Dominic Santoro specifically. "Of course," Maya agreed, pocketing the card she had no intention of using. It was nearly midnight when she finally left Laveau's, her usual route home through the French Quarter, feeling more exposed than usual. The gas lamps cast flickering shadows that seemed full of watchers. Her footsteps echoed too loudly on the cobblestones. Every car that passed made her flinch. She'd grown up learning to be invisible. 26 years of flying under the radar, not making waves, surviving by being the person nobody noticed. Tonight had shattered that careful anonymity. She'd made herself visible to someone who existed in the shadows by choice and profession. Her apartment occupied the third floor of a converted warehouse in the Marigny, 10 blocks from the restaurant. Cheap by French Quarter standards, which meant barely affordable on a waitress's salary, even with the tips from men like Dominic Santoro. She climbed the exterior stairs with her keys already in hand, checking the shadows of the landing before unlocking her door. The apartment was exactly as she'd left it. One room serving as bedroom, living room, and study, with a kitchenette tucked in the corner and a bathroom smaller than most closets. Medical textbooks covered every flat surface. Student loan statements and tuition bills created small mountains of financial anxiety on her desk. Maya locked the door, threw the deadbolt, and wedged a chair under the handle, a habit from childhood that no amount of supposed safety could break. Then she sat on her bed, still in her work clothes, and tried to stop shaking. She'd saved a woman's life tonight. That should feel good. Triumphant. Instead, she felt like she'd stepped off a cliff in the dark, with no idea how far the fall would be. The knock came at 2 a.m. 3 sharp raps, precisely spaced. Deliberate. Expected somehow. Despite Maya having fallen into an exhausted sleep, still wearing her server's uniform. She approached the door with her phone in one hand, 911, already dialed but not sent. The peephole revealed a man she didn't recognize. Broad-shouldered, expensive suit. The kind of careful stillness that suggested violence was a professional skill rather than an emotional response. "Miss Torres," he said, his voice carrying clearly through the door despite not being raised. "Mr. Santoro requests a conversation. At your convenience, of course." The "of course" made it clear that her convenience was expected to align with his request immediately. "It's 2 in the morning," Maya called back, hating the tremor in her voice. "Yes, ma'am. Mr. Santoro apologizes for the hour. However, given tonight's events, he felt time-sensitive matters required immediate discussion." A pause. "He's waiting in the car downstairs. 5 minutes of your time. In a public location if you prefer." Maya's finger hovered over the send button on her phone. She could call the police. Tell them a known criminal was outside her apartment. Watch them arrive and question Dominic Santoro, who would have done nothing illegal, said nothing threatening, and would simply leave. And tomorrow, or next week, or next month, this conversation would happen anyway, on his terms instead of hers, with no witnesses, no public location, no illusion of choice. 2 minutes, she said. I need to change. She pulled on jeans and a 2-lane sweatshirt, trading server anonymity for student armor. Grabbed her phone, pepper spray, and the kitchen knife she'd been carrying since she was 16. Then she removed the chair, threw the deadbolt, and opened the door to whatever came next. The man waited with professional patience. He didn't try to enter her apartment, didn't crowd her personal space, simply gestured toward the stairs with a slight nod. "After you, ma'am." The black Mercedes idled at the curb, its windows tinted dark enough to be illegal. The rear door opened as Maya approached, revealing Dominic Santoro sitting in shadows that somehow made the car's interior feel more intimate than threatening. "Miss Torres." His voice carried the same cultured neutrality as always. "Thank you for agreeing to speak with me." Maya slid into the car before she could second-guess the decision. The door closed behind her with the solid thunk of German engineering and soundproofing. The driver pulled away from the curb smoothly, heading toward the river. "I didn't agree to go anywhere," Maya said, proud of how steady her voice sounded. You said 5 minutes, in public. Jackson Square, Dominic replied, gesturing toward the route they were taking. Very public. Even at this hour. And we'll stay in the car if you prefer. Doors unlocked. Your choice entirely. His emphasis on choice felt deliberately mocking, but when Maya tested the door handle, it opened easily. The child locks weren't engaged. She could roll out into the street if she needed to, not that it would help if he wanted her dead. Men like Dominic Santoro didn't need locked doors to be dangerous. The champagne, she said, deciding directness was her only viable strategy. Was it meant for you, or for her? His expression didn't change, but something flickered in his eyes. Surprise, maybe, or reassessment. Perceptive question. What makes you ask? Because you reacted like someone who'd been betrayed, not someone who'd discovered a threat. Maya turned to face him fully, studying his profile in the passing streetlights. And because she looked terrified of you, not relieved you'd warned her. The car glided through the French Quarter's narrow streets, passing late-night bars and closed shops, tourists stumbling home, and locals who knew better than to stumble anywhere. Dominic remained silent until they reached Jackson Square, the cathedral's spires dark against the night sky. Genevieve Laurent was my fiancée, he said finally. 3 months ago, she vanished. No note, no explanation. Security footage showed her leaving my home with a single suitcase. She emptied her personal accounts, money I'd given her, and disappeared. And you let her go, Maya said slowly, understanding beginning to form. I let her go, he confirmed, because I thought she'd chosen to leave, that my life, my business, had become too much for her. His hands rested on his knees, relaxed yet somehow coiled. Tonight I discovered she'd married someone else, Richard Marchant, 2 months ago, very quietly. The shipping company owner, whose company has been struggling to compete with my shipping interests. Dominic's smile held no warmth, which makes tonight's poisoned champagne extremely interesting. Either Genevieve tried to kill herself out of guilt or fear, or someone tried to kill her to send me a message, or she tried to frame her new husband for attempted murder. Maya's criminology minor kicked in, analyzing possibilities. Or her husband discovered who she used to be engaged to and decided to eliminate the problem before you found out about the marriage. Also a possibility. Dominic turned to look at her directly for the first time. The police said you spotted the poisoned champagne through bubble patterns, Dominic observed. I notice things, Maya said carefully. It's part of being a good server. He nodded slowly. Yes. I imagine you notice quite a bit working at Laveau's, especially at my table. The air in the car seemed to thicken. Maya's hand moved toward the door handle, ready to bolt. I'm not a threat to you, Dominic said quietly. Quite the opposite. You saved a woman's life tonight. Possibly mine, if that champagne was meant as a warning about Genevieve. That creates an obligation. I don't want an obligation, Maya said quickly. I was just doing my job. Anyone would have done the same. Anyone didn't. You did. He reached into his jacket pocket, slowly telegraphing the movement, and withdrew a business card. Plain white cardstock, a phone number embossed in black. Nothing else. This number reaches me directly, 24 hours. If you ever need anything at all, you call it. Maya stared at the card like it might catch fire. Why would I need to call a... She trailed off, unsure how to finish the sentence without offense. A criminal? Dominic supplied, his tone holding amusement. Because you live alone in a marginal neighborhood. Because you work late nights in an industry full of predators. Because you're putting yourself through medical school on tips and student loans. He paused. Because you just interfered in what might be an attempted assassination, and the people responsible for that poisoning now know your name. Ice flooded Maya's veins. The police didn't release my information, The police don't control what the Marchants know or don't know. Richard Marchant has connections throughout this city. If he wanted to know who intervened tonight, he knows. If Genevieve wanted that information, she has it. Dominic's voice remained calm, but his words carried weight. And if either of them arranged that poisoning, you've made yourself a witness to attempted murder. Maya's hand closed around the business card despite every instinct screaming to throw it out the window. You're trying to scare me. I'm trying to protect you, Dominic corrected. There's a difference. Though I understand if you can't see it right now. The driver had circled the square twice during their conversation. Dominic tapped the divider and the car turned back toward Marigny. I have one question, Maya said as they approached her building. How did you know where I live? I've never told anyone at the restaurant my address. Dominic's smile was slight, barely there. Miss Torres, I know where everyone who enters my sphere lives. How else would I ensure their safety? The car stopped at her curb. The door opened automatically, controlled by the driver. Maya climbed out, then turned back. One foot on the sidewalk, one still in the car. Was it worth it? She asked. Loving someone dangerous enough that they'd rather poison themselves than face you? Something shifted in Dominic's expression, not pain, exactly, but recognition of it. I thought so, until tonight. Maya closed the door. The Mercedes pulled away smoothly, disappearing into the pre-dawn darkness. She stood on the sidewalk for a long moment, the business card heavy in her pocket, before climbing the stairs to her apartment. Inside, she wedged the chair back under the door handle, threw the deadbolt, and added the chain lock for good measure. Then she sat at her desk, staring at the white card with its single phone number, and wondered what exactly she'd gotten herself into. The card went into her wallet, just in case, just for emergencies. Just because Dominic Santoro had been right about one thing, she'd made herself visible tonight. And in New Orleans' underworld, visibility was either armor or target. She'd find out which soon enough. The morning after brought Detective Sarah Chen back to Laveau's during the lunch shift. Maya spotted her through the kitchen window. Same tired eyes, same thin wedding ring, same notebook that probably contained Maya's entire life story by now. Miss Torres. Chen slid onto a bar stool, ordering coffee black. Just following up on a few details from last night. Maya poured the coffee with hands steadier than she felt. 12 hours of fitful sleep and 3 cups of her own coffee had done little to settle the anxiety thrumming through her system. I already told you everything I remember. I'm sure you did. Chen added sugar she didn't need, stirring slowly. Though I'm curious about the car that picked you up at 2 a.m. black Mercedes, registered to a shell corporation with ties to Santoro's shipping interests. Maya's stomach dropped. Of course the police had been watching her apartment. Of course they'd seen. He wanted to thank me for noticing the poison, Maya said carefully, the partial truth easier than a complete lie. 5-minute conversation. That's all. In the middle of the night. Chen's tone remained conversational, but her eyes had sharpened. Must have been some gratitude. Detective, am I being accused of something? Not at all. Chen closed her notebook, leaving the coffee half-finished. Just be careful who you accept rides from, Miss Torres. Men like Dominic Santoro don't do anything without calculation. Gratitude in his world comes with strings attached. After Chen left, Marcus appeared at Maya's elbow, his voice low. Boss wants to see you in his office. Gerard Beaumont had owned Laveau's for 30 years, surviving economic downturns, Hurricane Katrina, and the complicated politics of running an upscale restaurant in a city where organized crime was as much a part of the infrastructure as the levees. He gestured Maya to a chair with the weariness of a man who'd seen this conversation coming. The police think you're involved with Santoro now, he said without preamble. And perception is reality in this business. I can't have staff that draws that kind of attention. Maya's chest tightened. I saved someone's life. I know. And I'm not firing you. Gerard pulled an envelope from his desk drawer. But I am giving you 2 weeks paid leave. Let things cool down. Let the police investigation conclude. Let Santoro's interest move elsewhere. The envelope contained $2,000 in cash, more than 2 weeks of wages, even with tips. I can't afford to take time off, Maya protested. I have tuition due next month. Consider it a bonus for your observational skills. Gerard's expression softened slightly. You did the right thing last night, Maya. But the right thing put you in the crosshairs of some very dangerous people. Take the time. Study for your exams. Stay away from Laveau's until this blows over. Maya accepted the envelope because refusing would insult Gerard's attempt at protection, even if it felt like being punished for doing the right thing. She walked out of his office with 2 weeks of forced invisibility stretching ahead and the growing certainty that invisibility was no longer an option. The text came that afternoon while she was pretending to study pharmacology in her apartment. Unknown number. The champagne bottle was purchased by Richard Marchant 3 days ago. Receipt shows delivery to table 9 specifically. Thought you'd want to know. DS Maya stared at her phone, heart pounding. Dominic Santoro had her number now, had investigated the poisoning, was sharing information with her like she was somehow part of this. She typed and deleted 5 responses before settling on, "Why are you telling me this?" His reply came instantly. "Because you're involved now whether you want to be or not. Better to be informed than blindsided." Her fingers hovered over the keyboard. "The detective thinks you're using me for something." The detective is partially correct. I'm using you as my eyes in places I can't look myself. But usage doesn't preclude protection. Maya threw her phone onto the bed, frustration warring with fear. She hadn't asked for this, hadn't wanted anything beyond getting through her shift and collecting her tips. Now she had a Mafia boss texting her crime scene analysis and a detective watching her apartment. The knock at her door 3 hours later made her jump. The peephole revealed a woman this time, petite, professionally dressed, carrying a leather portfolio that screamed expensive lawyer. "Miss Torres, my name is Claire Doucette. I represent certain business interests in the city." The woman's smile was pleasant and utterly cold. "I'd like to discuss last night's unfortunate incident. May I come in?" "I've already spoken to the police." "I'm not with the police." Claire's smile didn't waver. "I represent the Marchant family. Richard and Genevieve would like to express their gratitude for your quick thinking, and perhaps discuss the nature of your observations in a less official capacity." Every instinct Maya had developed in 26 years of survival screamed danger. "I'm not interested in discussing anything. Please leave." "Miss Torres, leave, now, or I'm calling the police." Claire's pleasant expression frosted over. "That would be unwise. My clients are simply trying to thank you appropriately. Refusing their generosity could be misinterpreted." Maya pulled out her phone, Dominic's business card already memorized. She didn't call, just held the phone where Claire could see the number on the screen. The lawyer's eyes widened slightly, recognition immediate. "I see," Claire said slowly. "You've already chosen your allegiances. How unfortunate. Good afternoon, Miss Torres." The door closed. Maya engaged all 3 locks with shaking hands, then stared at her phone. She'd just used Dominic Santoro as a shield without even calling him. Used his reputation as protection. Exactly what Detective Chen had warned her about. Her phone buzzed. Unknown number. "Claire Doucette just left your building. Are you all right?" Maya's blood ran cold. He was having her watched. Or having the building watched. Or somehow knew exactly who visited her and when. "How do you know that?" She typed back. Because Richard Marchant is desperate to control the narrative of last night. And desperate men make predictable choices. I posted someone outside your building this morning. Seemed prudent given the circumstances. You posted someone to watch me? To watch for you. There's a difference. Maya wanted to scream. Instead, she called the number, anger overriding caution. Dominic answered on the first ring. Miss Torres. You can't just put security on me without asking. Would you have said yes if I'd asked? His tone remained infuriatingly calm. That's not the point. The point is that Richard Marchant tried to poison his wife, my former fiancée, at their anniversary dinner. The point is that you prevented that murder and became a witness. The point is that the Marchants now need to ensure your testimony aligns with their version of events. He paused. The point, Miss Torres, is that you're in danger, whether you acknowledge it or not. Maya sank onto her bed, the fight draining out of her. I just wanted to save someone's life. I know. His voice softened slightly. And that instinct, that inability to look away when someone needs help, is admirable. It's also going to get you killed if you're not careful. So what am I supposed to do? Hide in my apartment for 2 weeks? No. You're supposed to let me help you. Help me how? Silence stretched between them, weighted with implications Maya wasn't sure she wanted to understand. Have dinner with me, Dominic said finally. Tonight. Let me explain exactly what you've walked into and what your options are. No obligations, no strings, just information so you can make informed decisions. Dinner with a crime boss seems like it comes with significant strings. Dinner with someone who understands the danger you're in and has resources to mitigate it. He paused. Your alternative is waiting for the Marchants to apply more pressure, or for the police to decide you're a suspect instead of a witness, or for whoever actually poisoned that champagne to eliminate loose ends. Maya pressed her palm against her forehead, fighting the headache building behind her eyes. Where? I'll send a car at 7, somewhere public, somewhere safe, somewhere you can leave whenever you want. I'm not getting in another car with your driver. Then I'll come to you. We'll walk to Commander's Palace. It's 4 blocks from your apartment. Public restaurant. You can leave any time. His tone shifted, becoming almost gentle. I'm not your enemy, Maya, despite what the detective thinks. The use of her first name sent an unexpected shiver down her spine. 7 o'clock, she agreed, then hung up before she could second-guess the decision. She had 4 hours to decide what to wear to dinner with New Orleans' most dangerous man, and to figure out why part of her was less terrified than she should be. Dominic Santoro arrived at her building at precisely 7 o'clock, alone except for the driver who stayed with the Mercedes parked at the curb. He wore a charcoal suit without a tie, the informality somehow making him seem more dangerous rather than less. You came alone, Maya observed, stepping out of her building in the only dress she owned that wasn't a server's uniform, navy blue, simple, appropriate for a medical school interview, or apparently dinner with organized crime. You asked for public and safe. Arriving with security detail defeats that purpose. He offered his arm with old-fashioned courtesy. Though Marco is in the car if needed, and 2 others are already at Commander's Palace ensuring we won't be disturbed by the Marchants or overly curious police. Maya ignored his offered arm, walking beside him instead of with him. The evening air carried that particular New Orleans humidity that made everything feel heavy and languid. Garden District mansions rose around them, their grandeur a stark contrast to her converted warehouse apartment. Tell me about Genevieve Laurent, Maya said as they walked. The real story, not the version you gave me last night. Dominic was quiet for half a block. I met her 2 years ago at a charity gala. She was there with an art gallery owner, working as a curator. Beautiful, intelligent, completely uninterested in my reputation. He smiled slightly. Or so I thought. She knew who you were. Everyone knows who I am. But she didn't treat me like the gentleman. She treated me like Dominic. Like a man who happened to have complicated business interests. They turned onto St. Charles Avenue, the streetcar, tracks gleaming in the fading light. We dated for 8 months before I proposed. Another 4 months of engagement. Then she vanished. Why? I assumed she'd realized what being married to me actually meant. The security, the scrutiny, the inability to have a normal life. He held open the door to Commander's Palace, the iconic restaurant glowing with warm light. Now, I'm not sure what to assume. The maitre d' recognized Dominic immediately, leading them to a private corner table with sightlines to all entrances. 2 men in suits sat at the bar, his security, Maya realized, positioned to intercept trouble before it reached them. Wine? Dominic asked, then shook his head. Probably insensitive given last night. Water. Coffee? Water's fine. Maya studied him across the white tablecloth. You still love her? Even after she left. Even after she married someone else. I loved who I thought she was. He poured water from the crystal carafe with steady hands. I'm less certain about who she actually is. Their waiter appeared, a young man who addressed Dominic as Mr. Santoro with careful respect, and took their orders. Maya chose the cheapest entree by habit before catching herself and switching to what she actually wanted. Dominic's slight smile suggested he'd noticed. The police analysis came back this afternoon, he said once they were alone again. Oleander extract in the champagne, professional grade, not something Richard Marchant would have access to easily. But you would. Yes. Which makes this situation rather convenient for the Marchants, doesn't it? Dominic's fingers traced the base of his water glass. Richard's wife nearly dies from poison. The poison is traced to a bottle he ordered, but he can claim someone else, someone with means and motive, arrange the whole thing. Maya's criminology training caught up with her instincts. They're setting you up. The wife you loved mysteriously leaves you and immediately marries your business rival. Then she's nearly poisoned with a substance linked to organized crime. You look guilty of either attempted murder or attempted revenge. Very good. Dominic's approval felt dangerous. And the only witness who can contradict their narrative is a medical student with no connections, no resources, and no protection. The witness who you just happened to have dinner with the night after the poisoning. Maya's stomach sank. They'll say you're influencing my testimony, that you've threatened or bought me. Also correct, which is why we're having this dinner in a very public restaurant with your ability to leave at any time. He leaned forward slightly. I need you to understand something, Maya. I didn't poison Genevieve. I have no interest in harming her despite her betrayal, but I very much have an interest in discovering who did poison her and why. Because it makes you look weak. Because it makes me look guilty. There's a difference. His voice hardened slightly. In my business, reputation is everything. I can be feared, I can be respected, I can even be hated. But I cannot be guilty of poisoning an innocent woman at her anniversary dinner. That crosses lines that even my world doesn't tolerate. Their food arrived, buying Maya time to process. The duck was perfectly prepared, melting on her tongue, but she barely tasted it. What do you want from me? She asked finally. Honesty. When the police question you again, and they will, tell them exactly what you saw. The champagne looked wrong. You removed it as a precaution. I approached the table because I recognized Genevieve, that's all. That is all that happened. Yes. But the Marchants will try to convince you that you saw me do something suspicious, that perhaps I switched the glasses, that maybe I said something threatening. Dominic cut his steak with precise movements. They'll offer you money to adjust your memory, or they'll threaten you to ensure your silence. Possibly both. And you're not doing the same thing right now? I'm explaining the game board so you understand which pieces are moving and why. He met her eyes directly. You can walk away from this table right now, refuse my protection, give whatever testimony you choose. I won't stop you or threaten you or harm you in any way. But, Maya prompted, hearing the unspoken condition. But the merchants won't extend the same courtesy, and whoever actually poisoned that champagne, if it wasn't Richard, is still out there, aware that you prevented their plan. Maya set down her fork, appetite completely gone. Why me? Why did I have to notice that champagne? Because you're perceptive and compassionate and unable to ignore danger even when it would be safer to look away. Dominic's expression softened. Those are remarkable qualities, Maya. They're also dangerous ones in a city like this. The waiter cleared their plates. Dominic ordered coffee for them both, the domestic normalcy of the gesture bizarre given the conversation's content. I've posted security at your building, he said as they waited for dessert neither of them would eat. 2 men, rotating 12-hour shifts. They won't interfere with your life, won't approach you or restrict your movement, but they'll ensure the merchants don't pay you any more unexpected visits. I didn't agree to that. You don't have to agree. It's not negotiable. His tone left no room for argument. You saved a life last night. Possibly mine, possibly Genevieve's, possibly both. That creates an obligation I take seriously. Whether you want protection or not, you have it. Maya wanted to argue, wanted to throw the protection back in his face and insist on managing her own safety. But the memory of Claire Doucette's cold smile stopped her. The lawyer's barely veiled threat. The implication that refusing the Martian's gratitude could be dangerous. How long? She asked instead. Until the police investigation concludes. Until whoever poisoned that champagne is identified and dealt with. Until the Marchants realize you're not a target they can eliminate without consequences. He paused. Realistically, 2 weeks minimum, possibly longer. 2 weeks. The same amount of time Gerard had given her to lay low. Possibly not coincidence. Dominic's influence extended further than she'd realized. And after 2 weeks, when the investigation is over and the police stop watching me and your security disappears? Maya forced herself to ask the harder question. What happens when I'm just a waitress again and you're just a Friday night regular and neither of us has an excuse for this? Dominic's expression was unreadable in the candlelight. I suppose that depends on what you want to happen. The weight of implication hung between them. Maya found herself studying his hands again. Those careful, dangerous hands that had folded her receipt with 3 circled words and turned her entire life sideways. I want to finish medical school, she said finally. I want to become an ER doctor. I want to save lives without it putting me in the crosshairs of organized crime families. Admirable goals. Dominic signaled for the check, placing cash on the table without waiting for the bill. Though I should mention that ER doctors in New Orleans see consequences of organized crime regularly. Gunshot wounds, overdoses, bodies pulled from the river. You'll never escape it entirely in this city. That's different from being directly involved. Is it? He stood, offering his hand to help her from her chair. Maya took it without thinking, the brief contact sending an unexpected current through her skin. You notice the poisoned champagne because you've trained yourself to see details others miss. That skill will make you an excellent doctor. It's also made you valuable in ways you didn't anticipate. They walked back toward her apartment in silence, the garden district's beauty taking on sinister shadows as night deepened. Maya found herself hyper-aware of Dominic beside her, the controlled grace of his movement, the way his eyes constantly scanned their surroundings, the coiled violence hidden beneath expensive tailoring. There, he said quietly as they approached her building, gesturing with subtle direction. Gray sedan, half a block up. That's Miguel. And across the street in the coffee shop, that's Simone. Maya spotted them now that he'd pointed them out. professional, nearly invisible, watching without obviously watching. They won't interfere with your life, but they will ensure you're safe. They stopped at her building's entrance. Maya fumbled for her keys, suddenly nervous in a way that had nothing to do with fear. "Thank you for dinner," she said formally. "And for the explanation, even if I don't like any of it." "You weren't supposed to like it. You were supposed to understand it." Dominic's hand moved as if to touch her arm, then stopped, respecting boundaries she hadn't explicitly set. "My number is in your phone. Use it if you need anything. Anything at all. Even if it's to tell you to back off?" His smile was slight, genuine. "Even then. Though I hope you won't." Maya climbed the stairs to her apartment, feeling his eyes on her until she reached her door. Only then did she hear the Mercedes pull away, leaving her in the protection of strangers whose job was to keep her safe from other strangers who wanted her silent. Inside, she wedged the chair under the door handle by habit, then realized how futile the gesture had become. Dominic Santoro could get to her any time he wanted. The security outside wasn't to keep him out. It was to keep everyone else out while he decided what to do with the waitress who'd saved his ex-fiancé's life. Her phone buzzed. "You're safe tonight. Sleep well." DS Maya stared at the message for a long moment before typing back. "How do you know I'll sleep well?" "Because Miguel just confirmed all your locks are secure and no one followed us from the restaurant. And because I'll know immediately if that changes." She should be disturbed by that level of surveillance. Should be terrified by the casual way he discussed monitoring her safety. Instead, she found herself typing, "Thank you. You're welcome. Good night, Maya." She fell asleep with her phone on the nightstand, Dominic's number now saved under emergency, and the bizarre certainty that for the first time in her adult life, someone was actively ensuring she survived the night. The danger in that realization was how safe it made her feel. The next 3 days passed in strange suspension. Maya studied for exams she couldn't concentrate on, ran errands with invisible escorts, and received daily texts from Dominic. Updates on the police investigation, warnings about marchant movements, occasional questions about her day that felt dangerously personal. "How did your pharmacology exam go?" he asked Wednesday afternoon. "How do you know I had an exam? Simone mentioned you left early with textbooks." "I assumed." Maya found herself smiling despite everything. "I think I passed. Poison identification was surprisingly relevant. Glad I could contribute to your education." Detective Chen appeared again on Thursday, this time at Maya's apartment with backup. A male detective whose name she didn't catch, and whose presence felt deliberately intimidating. "We need you to come down to the station," Chen said, her tired eyes conveying apology her partners didn't. "Formal statement, recorded. For the case file." "Am I under arrest?" "Of course not. But Richard Marchant is claiming the poisoned champagne was meant for him, not his wife. He's suggesting someone with connections to organized crime attempted to murder him at his anniversary dinner." Chen's expression made clear what she thought of that theory. "Your testimony is crucial to establishing what actually happened." Maya texted Dominic before responding. "Police want formal statement. Going to station now." His reply came, instantly. "Don't go alone. Give me 10 minutes." "I'd like to bring someone with me," Maya told Chen. "Is that allowed?" "A lawyer?" Chen's expression shifted to professional neutrality. "That's your right, though it might make this seem more adversarial than necessary." "Not a lawyer, a witness to the incident. He was at the restaurant that night." Chen's eyes narrowed. "Dominic Santoro is not coming to the police station as your support system, Miss Torres. That looks terrible for you and worse for our investigation." "Then I'm not making a statement until I consult with an attorney." Maya crossed her arms, channeling every ounce of stubborn determination that had gotten her through foster care and medical school. "That's my right, isn't it?" The male detective stepped forward. Miss Torres, refusing to cooperate makes you look guilty. Of what exactly? Maya cut him off. I noticed poison. I prevented a death. I reported it immediately. What part of that makes me guilty? A black Mercedes pulled up to the curb before Chen could respond. Dominic emerged with a woman Maya hadn't seen before, 50-ish, impeccably dressed, carrying a briefcase that screamed expensive legal counsel. Detective Chen. Dominic greeted pleasantly. I believe Miss Torres requested legal representation before making any formal statements. This is Isabel Moreau. The woman introduced herself, extending a hand to Maya with professional warmth. I'm a defense attorney specializing in criminal law. Mr. Santoro retained my services to ensure your rights are protected during this investigation. Chen's jaw tightened. Of course he did. If you're not arresting my client, she'll voluntarily accompany you to the station with me present, Isabel continued smoothly. We're happy to cooperate fully with your investigation, provided Miss Torres isn't being treated as a suspect rather than a witness. The male detective looked ready to argue, but Chen placed a hand on his arm. Fine. Your client can make her statement with counsel present. Let's go. Maya found herself in the back of a police car for the first time in her life, Isabel beside her, reviewing her rights in a calm, measured voice. Dominic followed in his Mercedes, his presence both reassuring and complicating in ways Maya couldn't fully process. At the station, they were led to an interview room. Deliberately uncomfortable chairs, fluorescent lighting, one-way mirror that probably had half the department watching. Maya forced herself to breathe slowly, channeling the calm she'd perfected serving difficult customers. Chen started the recording, stating names and case numbers for the record, then turned to Maya with an expression that somehow managed both sympathy and suspicion. In your own words, Miss Torres, tell us exactly what happened the night of June 15th at Laveau's restaurant. Maya recounted the evening with careful precision, noticing the champagne bubbles, removing the glasses, her concern about product recall. She mentioned Dominic approaching table 9, recognizing Genevieve, the tense conversation that followed. Did Mr. Santoro threaten Mrs. Marchant? The male detective asked. No. He identified himself, mentioned they had history, and suggested the conversation would be better continued elsewhere. Did you see him near the champagne bottle before you noticed the poison? No. He was at his own table the entire evening until I passed him the receipt. The receipt you'd written a message on. Maya hesitated. Isabel leaned forward slightly. My client informed Mr. Santoro of her concern about the champagne through a discreet note to avoid panic in the restaurant. That's responsible behavior, not conspiracy. Or it's coordination between a witness and a suspect, the male detective countered. If you're happy with this story so far, make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss an upload. Your support means everything and helps me bring you more emotional stories like this one. Mr. Santoro isn't a suspect, Chen corrected her partner, though her tone suggested she wished he were. He has alibis for the champagne purchase and delivery. Richard Marchant ordered that bottle specifically. Which brings us to the interesting question, Isabel interjected smoothly. If Mr. Marchant ordered the poisoned champagne, why is my client being interrogated as if she's involved in attempted murder? Silence filled the room. Chen's expression shifted from professional to genuinely troubled. Because Richard Marchant is claiming someone switched the bottles, she said finally. He's saying he ordered champagne, but what was delivered wasn't what he requested. He's suggesting someone with access to the restaurant's storage areas replaced his bottle with a poisoned one. Maya's stomach dropped. You think I poisoned the champagne? We think someone did, Chen replied. And you were the only person who handled those glasses after they were poured. To prevent someone from drinking them. Or to dispose of evidence of tampering. The male detective's voice held accusation. Convenient that you noticed the poison and removed the glasses before anyone else could examine the original bottle. This is absurd, Isabel said coldly. My client has no motive, no connection to either party, and no access to professional-grade poison. You're reaching because your actual suspect has a convenient story. Our actual suspect has receipts proving he ordered safe champagne, the detective countered, and security footage showing your client handling the bottle in the restaurant's wine storage area earlier that evening. The floor seemed to drop out from under Maya's chair. I was getting wine for another table. Standard server duties. That doesn't prove. It proves access and opportunity. He leaned forward. Here's what I think happened. Dominic Santoro found out his ex-fiancée married his business rival. He was enraged, humiliated, wanted revenge, but he's too smart to do it himself. So he recruited someone clean, someone with no criminal record, someone who works at the restaurant where he's a regular. That's enough, Isabel cut in sharply. You're speculating without evidence. My client is done answering questions. We're not finished. Yes, you are. Isabel stood, gesturing for Maya to do the same. Unless you're charging Miss Torres with a crime, this interview is over. And if you do charge her, be prepared for the legal battle of your career. Chen raised her hand, stopping her partner's protest. Miss Torres isn't being charged, not yet. But don't leave the city, we'll have more questions. Outside the station, Maya's hands shook so badly she couldn't manage her phone. Isabel guided her to the Mercedes where Dominic waited, his expression darker than Maya had seen it. They think I helped you poison Genevieve, Maya said, her voice distant to her own ears. They think we planned it together. I know. Dominic's hands tightened on the steering wheel. Richard Marchant is smarter than I gave him credit for. He's not just defending himself. He's creating a narrative where I look guilty, and you look like my accomplice. The security footage of me in the wine storage is you doing your job. But taken out of context, it looks suspicious. He pulled into traffic with controlled aggression. They're building a circumstantial case because they can't build a real one. So what do we do? Maya heard the we in her own voice and couldn't take it back. We prove Richard Marchant is lying. Dominic's tone carried absolute certainty. And we do it before the police decide you're worth prosecuting to get to me. Isabel leaned forward from the back seat. I'll file motions to suppress the interrogation. Argue that they treated her as a suspect without reading rights. Buy us time. How much time? Maya asked. A week. Maybe 2. Isabel's expression was grim. After that, the DA might decide they have enough for charges. Conspiracy to commit murder carries 20 years minimum. 20 years. Maya's entire future, medical school, residency, the life she'd fought so hard to build, evaporating because she'd noticed poisoned champagne and tried to save someone's life. Dominic's phone rang. He answered with clipped efficiency, his expression growing darker as he listened. When? Are you certain? A pause. Increase security at all properties. No one in or out without full clearance, and get Maya to somewhere secure. Now. He ended the call, his eyes meeting Maya's in the rearview mirror. Genevieve Marchant was just found dead in her hospital room, apparent suicide. She left a note confessing to poisoning her own champagne, claiming she couldn't live with the guilt of betraying me. The world tilted sideways. Maya gripped the door handle, struggling to process. That's convenient, Isabel said carefully. Almost too convenient. It's a frame. Job, Dominic said flatly. Richard murdered his wife and staged it as suicide. Now the police have a confession that implicates me emotionally and you practically. We're witnesses to Genevieve's state of mind that night. Our testimony becomes crucial to proving whether her suicide note is genuine. Or, Maya said slowly, her criminology training cutting through the shock, they'll argue we drove her to suicide, that your confrontation and my intervention traumatized her so badly she killed herself. Either way, you're in danger. Dominic turned onto a street Maya didn't recognize, heading away from her apartment. Richard Marchant has eliminated his wife. Now he needs to eliminate the witnesses who can contradict his narrative. Where are we going? Somewhere the Marchants can't reach you. Somewhere the police can't pressure you into testimony that serves their case, instead of the truth. His eyes found hers in the mirror again. Somewhere you'll be safe while I prove what really happened that night. Maya should protest. Should demand to be taken to her apartment. Should insist on handling this through legal channels. Should refuse to let a crime boss dictate her safety. Instead, she found herself asking, "How long?" "As long as it takes." Dominic's voice carried the same certainty it had the night they'd walked to Commander's palace. "I protect what's mine, Maya. And whether you accept it or not, you became mine the moment you circled those 3 words." The possessive declaration should have terrified her. Instead, as they drove deeper into the night toward an unknown destination, Maya felt something uncomfortably close to relief. She'd stopped being invisible. Now she just had to survive being seen. The safe house existed in the strange space between luxury and fortress. Located in the Garden District, the historic mansion's beautiful facade concealed reinforced doors, bulletproof windows, and security systems that would make a government facility envious. Maya's room on the second floor overlooked a courtyard garden where armed men rotated positions with military precision. "It's temporary," Dominic had said when they arrived near midnight, "just until we establish what actually happened and neutralize the threat." That was 4 days ago. 4 days of living in a gilded cage while Dominic's investigators worked to unravel the Marchant conspiracy. 4 days of watching news coverage speculate about Genevieve's tragic suicide and her confession implicating her former fiancé in psychological abuse. 4 days of Detective Chen leaving increasingly urgent voicemails demanding Maya's location for additional questioning. 4 days of Dominic visiting every evening, sharing updates, bringing meals they ate together in the library while rain drummed against windows and the investigation closed around them like a vice. Richard Marchant's shipping company was on the verge of bankruptcy, Dominic explained on the 3rd night, spreading financial documents across the mahogany table. 3 months ago, he took out a $5 million life insurance policy on Genevieve, named himself sole beneficiary. Maya studied the paperwork with growing horror. He married her to kill her. He married her because she had connections to me. Money I'd given her during our engagement. Nearly $1 million in jewelry and accounts. Dominic's finger traced a transfer record. She emptied those accounts the day she left, but instead of keeping the money, she transferred it to Richard within a week. She was helping him, or he was blackmailing her. Dominic pulled up another document, a photograph of Genevieve with a man who wasn't Richard or Dominic, taken outside a hotel. This was taken 6 months ago, before she left me. The man is Marcus Devereaux, Richard's business partner. Maya's medical training kicked in, analyzing the photo clinically. Her body language suggests intimacy. She's leaning into him, hand on his arm. She was having an affair. Dominic's voice remained level, but pain flickered in his eyes. Probably throughout our engagement. Richard likely discovered it, used it as leverage, convinced her to help him access my money and business connections. But something went wrong. Everything went wrong. Dominic closed the laptop with controlled force. Genevieve developed a conscience, started questioning the plan. Richard realized she'd become a liability, especially after I discovered her marriage. So he arranged the poisoned champagne, intending to murder her in public while establishing an alibi. Except I noticed the poison. Except you noticed. His eyes met hers with an intensity that made her breath catch. You saved her life temporarily, but Richard couldn't risk her talking. So he finished what the champagne started, made it look like suicide, complete with a confession designed to implicate both of us. Maya rose from her chair, pacing the library with restless energy. The police won't believe any of this without proof. They'll say you're manufacturing evidence to avoid murder charges. Which is why I need the one piece of evidence that's unimpeachable. Dominic stood as well, his presence somehow making the vast library feel intimate. I need Genevieve's medical records from the night she was hospitalized. Specifically, the toxicology report showing what was actually in her system when she arrived. Why would that matter? Because oleander poisoning has a distinctive timeline. If she was poisoned at the restaurant, the toxins would still be present when she was admitted. But if her blood work shows no oleander, then the champagne wasn't actually poisoned. Maya's mind raced ahead. Richard manufactured the whole thing, the bottle, the police report, the evidence. All staged after the fact to build his narrative. Dominic's smile held no warmth. But he couldn't fake toxicology results without access to her blood work. And if I can prove she wasn't poisoned at dinner, then her suicide becomes obviously murder, and his entire story collapses. They stood facing each other in the lamplight, the weight of revelation hanging between them. Maya found herself noticing details she'd tried to ignore, the way Dominic's jaw tightened when he was angry, the careful control he maintained over every gesture, the way his eyes softened when they landed on her. I can't get those medical records, Dominic said quietly. Not legally. Not without alerting Richard that we're onto him. But you could. Maya's stomach dropped. You want me to steal confidential patient records? I want you to request records for the patient whose life you saved. You're listed as the reporting witness on the police report. You have standing to request information related to the incident. His hand moved as if to touch her shoulder, then stopped. It's not illegal. Just ethically complicated. Everything about this is ethically complicated. Maya turned away, staring at the rain-streaked windows. I came to New Orleans to become a doctor, to help people. Now I'm hiding in a safe house while a crime boss asks me to help him investigate a murder. I know. Dominic's voice came from directly behind her, close enough that she could feel his warmth. I know this isn't the life you wanted, isn't the future you planned. But Maya. He paused, and she heard something raw in his voice. You're the only person I trust completely in this. The only one who isn't part of my world, who doesn't have an agenda, who simply did the right thing because it needed doing. She turned to face him, surprised by how close he stood. And what happens after? When we prove Richard killed Genevieve? When the police investigation ends and I'm no longer useful? Useful. Dominic's laugh was short, bitter. You think that's why? He stopped himself, jaw working. You've never been useful to me, Maya. You've been essential. There's a difference. What difference? Useful implies interchangeable. Essential means irreplaceable. His hand finally completed the gesture he'd been stopping for days, his fingers gentle against her cheek. You became essential the moment you circled those 3 words. Everything since has just been me realizing how much. Maya knew she should step back, should maintain the professional distance that had been eroding since that first dinner at Commander's Palace. Instead, she found herself leaning into his touch, her own hand rising to cover his. This is a terrible idea, she whispered. Catastrophically terrible, he agreed, his other hand sliding to her waist. I'm a medical student. You're a criminal, I know. His forehead touched hers. But I've never claimed to be a good man, Maya. Just an honest one. And honestly, I haven't been able to stop thinking about you since you handed me that receipt. The kiss happened with the same inevitability as everything else that week. Overwhelming, dangerous, and somehow exactly right. Maya surrendered to it, her hands fisting in his shirt. 4 days of tension and fear and unwanted attraction, finally finding release. When they broke apart, both breathing hard, Dominic's expression mixed desire with something like regret. We can't, he said. even as his hands remained on her waist. "Not while you're here under my protection. Not while you don't have real choice about leaving. I choose to be here." Maya surprised herself with the certainty in her voice. "Do you? Or are you just choosing survival?" His thumb traced her cheekbone with devastating gentleness. "When this is over, when you're safe and free and back to your real life, ask me then. If you still want this, if you still want me despite knowing exactly what I am, ask me then." He stepped back, the loss of contact feeling like amputation. "For now, we focus on keeping you alive and proving Richard Marchant is a murderer. Everything else waits." Maya nodded, not trusting her voice. The space between them felt charged with everything they weren't saying, everything they were postponing, everything that might never happen if the next few days went wrong. "I'll get the medical records," she said finally. "Tomorrow. But you need to promise me something. Anything. If this goes wrong, if the police connect me to the theft, if Richard discovers what we're doing, you let me face the consequences. No more protection. No more interference. I won't let you destroy yourself trying to save me." Dominic's expression hardened. "That's not a promise I can make." "Then we don't do this." Maya crossed her arms, channeling every ounce of stubborn determination. "I'm not a damsel who needs rescuing. I'm a partner who needs respect. If we're doing this, we do it as equals. Or not at all." Silence stretched between them. Finally, Dominic nodded slowly. "Partners," he agreed, "though I reserve the right to be catastrophically terrible at maintaining professional distance." Maya's smile felt like the first genuine thing in days. "I can live with that." The hospital's administrative offices closed at 5. Maya arrived at 4:47, dressed in professional clothes Dominic's staff had provided, carrying a notarized letter requesting medical records related to the Genevieve Marchant poisoning case. Her hands shook as she presented identification to the records clerk. "This might take a few days to process," the clerk said, barely looking up from her computer. "I understand. Though I was hoping, given the circumstances, there might be a way to expedite." Maya leaned forward, lowering her voice conspiratorially. "I'm actually a medical student at Tulane. I saved Mrs. Marchant's life that night. My professors want me to present the case as part of my toxicology coursework. They're emphasizing the importance of quick intervention in poison cases." The clerk's expression softened. "Oh, you're the waitress. I saw the news coverage. That was really brave what you did." "Thank you." Maya managed a modest smile despite her racing heart. "The case really highlighted how important clinical observation is. I just want to make sure I have the complete medical picture for my presentation. Let me see what I can do." The clerk typed rapidly. "You know, technically I'm supposed to route this through legal counsel, but since you're listed as the reporting witness and you're requesting records for academic purposes." She printed several pages, sliding them across the counter in a manila envelope. "Unofficial copies, for educational use only." Maya accepted the envelope with hands steadier than she felt. "Thank you so much. This really helps." Outside, she climbed into the waiting Mercedes where Dominic sat in the back seat, his expression tense. "Did you get them?" Maya handed him the envelope without speaking. He opened it immediately, scanning the toxicology report with growing intensity. "Nothing," he said finally, his voice tight with vindication. "No oleander. No poison of any kind in her system when she was admitted. Her only symptoms were anxiety and elevated heart rate, consistent with psychological distress, not chemical poisoning." So the champagne was never poisoned. Maya felt sick. Richard staged the whole thing after I removed the glasses. Probably poisoned the champagne in police custody or switched bottles during evidence collection. Which means Genevieve was never in danger from the champagne, only from her husband. Dominic pulled out his phone, photographing each page of the report. This proves Richard manufactured evidence, and it gives us motive for why he killed her. She knew the poisoning was fake, could expose his plan. Will the police believe it? Not coming from me. Dominic's expression hardened. But they'll believe their own evidence. We just need to make sure they actually look at what they already have. He made a call, his voice shifting into the controlled authority Maya recognized from their first dinner. Detective Chen, I have information relevant to the Marchant case. Anonymous tip. The hospital records from Genevieve Marchant's admission the night of the alleged poisoning. I suggest you compare the toxicology results with the evidence Richard Marchant provided. You'll find some interesting discrepancies. He listened for a moment, then continued. I'm not negotiating, detective. I'm giving you the key to solving your case. What you do with it is your choice. But if you're interested in actual justice rather than convenient prosecutions, you'll follow up. The records will be on your desk in an hour. He ended the call, then turned to Maya. Now we wait, and hope Chen is more interested in truth than closing cases. The wait lasted 3 days. 3 days of mounting tension as Maya remained in the safe house while Dominic's network tracked police movements. 3 days of watching news coverage shift subtly from Genevieve's tragic suicide to questions about Richard, Marchant's timeline and behavior. 3 days of Maya studying for exams she'd missed while living in hiding, her future suspended between vindication and prosecution. On the third day, Detective Chen appeared at the safe house with 2 uniformed officers and an expression that mixed exhaustion with grudging respect. Miss Torres, she said when Maya came downstairs, I need you to come with me. Not under arrest, she added quickly. But there are some things you need to see. At the police station, Chen led Maya to a conference room where evidence photographs covered every surface. Richard Marchant's financial records, the poisoned champagne bottle, Genevieve's hospital records, and new photographs. Genevieve's body in her hospital room, ligature marks on her wrists inconsistent with self-inflicted hanging. We arrested Richard Marchant this morning, Chen said without preamble. Charged with murder in the first degree, evidence tampering, insurance fraud, and conspiracy to commit murder. Maya sank into a chair, relief flooding through her. The hospital records proved the champagne was never poisoned when you removed it from table 9. Richard poisoned it afterward during evidence collection to establish his narrative. Chen pulled up security footage on her laptop. We also found this. Richard entering the evidence room at the precinct 3 hours after the champagne was logged. He had access through his lawyer's credentials. The footage showed Richard Marchant moving with careful purpose, a small vial in his hand as he approached the evidence locker. He poisoned his own evidence, Maya said slowly, made it look like the champagne was contaminated all along. And when Genevieve didn't die that night, because you prevented her from drinking it, he had to finish the job himself. Made it look like suicide, complete with a confession he forced her to write before he killed her. Chen's expression softened slightly. You were right all along, Miss Torres. You did save her life. Just not permanently. And Dominic is no longer a suspect in the poisoning, though he remains a person of interest in about 75 other investigations. Chen managed a tired smile. Tell him he's still not welcome at the station, but tell him thank you. For the tip. We might not have looked at the hospital records without it. Outside the station, the Mercedes waited. Maya climbed in to find Dominic watching her with an intensity that made her breath catch. It's over, she said. Richard's been arrested. They know the truth. I know. Chen called me an hour ago. Professional courtesy. His hand found hers across the seat. You're free, Maya. No charges. No suspicion. Your life goes back to normal. Normal, Maya repeated, testing the word. It felt foreign after the past 2 weeks. Medical school, ER residency, saving lives without poisoned champagne or crime boss complications. Dominic's thumb traced circles on her palm. Everything you wanted before you noticed those bubbles. Maya studied their intertwined hands, her small fingers caught in his larger ones, student and criminal, opposite worlds that had collided over 3 circled words. "I remember what you said," she murmured. "After this was over. When I was safe and free. If I still wanted this, wanted you, I should ask." "Maya, I'm asking." She met his eyes directly. "I know what you are. I know what being with you means. And I'm still asking." Dominic's expression struggled between desire and something like pain. "You should go back to your life. Finish medical school. Find someone safe who doesn't come with bodyguards and police investigations." "Should." Maya leaned forward. "But what do you want?" "I want—" His control cracked. "I want to be selfish. Want to keep you close despite knowing I'm the worst possible choice. Want to see if something that started with poison and murder could somehow become something real. Then be selfish." Maya closed the distance between them. "For once, just let yourself have what you want." This kiss was different from the library. Less desperate, more deliberate, weighted with the certainty of choice rather than circumstance. When they broke apart, Dominic's forehead rested against hers, his hands cradling her face with devastating gentleness. "I can't promise you safety," he said quietly. "My world will always have danger. I'm going to be an ER doctor in New Orleans. I was never going to have safety. I can't promise normal. Dinners will be interrupted by security concerns. Vacations will require armed escorts. Your friends will ask uncomfortable questions. I stopped being normal the day I circled 3 words on a Mafia boss's receipt." Maya's smile felt fierce. "I'm not asking for easy, Dominic. I'm asking for real." His kiss tasted like surrender and promise combined. "Real I can do," he murmured against her lips. "Real is the only thing I've ever been good at." 6 months later, the ER resident evaluation sat on Maya's desk, marked with commendations for exceptional diagnostic intuition and remarkable composure under pressure. Her first year of medical school had concluded with honors despite the chaos of spring semester. The scholarship money Dominic had arranged, legitimately, through a foundation that existed long before they met, ensured she could focus on studies rather than double shifts. Laveau's had welcomed her back after the investigation concluded, though her shifts now included discreet security that made managers nervous and customers curious. Gerard had accepted the new normal with weary grace, recognizing that Maya Torres came with complications he couldn't change. Detective Chen occasionally stopped by for coffee. Their relationship evolved into something like mutual respect. She never asked about Maya's personal life. Maya never volunteered information about whose home she spent most nights in. The Garden District mansion had become familiar territory. Security that nodded greetings, staff who knew her preferences, rooms that felt like sanctuary rather than cage. Dominic's world remained dangerous, complicated, morally gray in ways Maya's ethics courses hadn't prepared her for. But it was also filled with surprising tenderness, flowers that appeared after difficult exams, books he thought she'd enjoy, quiet evenings where they simply existed together without performance or pretense. "You're thinking too loud," Dominic murmured from where he worked at his desk, papers spread across mahogany that had probably witnessed countless illegal transactions. Maya looked up from her pharmacology text. "Just wondering how this happened. 6 months ago, I was a waitress trying to be invisible. Now I'm dating New Orleans' most notorious criminal while studying to save lives. Ironic, isn't it?" He set down his pen, giving her his full attention. "Though I prefer legitimate businessman with complicated interests. Your legitimate business includes shipping routes that conveniently avoid customs inspections. Efficiency is important in global trade." His smile was unrepentant. Besides, you knew what you were getting into. Did I? Maya rose from the library sofa, crossing to his desk. I'm not sure anyone knows what they're getting into with you. Probably wise. Dominic pulled her into his lap with easy strength. Though you've adapted remarkably well. My associates are terrified of you. Your associates are terrified of everyone. True. But they're specifically terrified of the medical student who notices things no one else sees and isn't afraid to call me out when I'm being an idiot. His hands settled at her waist with possessive familiarity. It's extremely attractive. Maya laughed despite herself. You have a strange definition of attractive. I have excellent taste. You proved that by noticing poison champagne bubbles. His expression sobered. Have you heard from Genevieve's family? Her sister called last week. Wanted to thank me for trying to save her. Said Genevieve had been planning to leave Richard. Was going to testify about his insurance fraud. Maya's throat tightened. If I'd been faster, noticed sooner. You did everything possible. Dominic's voice carried absolute certainty. Richard Marchant is serving life without parole because you noticed something wrong and acted on it. That's not failure, Maya. That's justice. Doesn't feel like justice when she's still dead. No. His arms tightened around her. But it's what we have. What you fought for. What you continue fighting for every time you walk into that ER and save someone the system would rather let slip through cracks. Maya leaned into his embrace, accepting comfort from the most unlikely source. My ethics professor would be horrified by this relationship. Your ethics professor doesn't understand that morality exists in gradients rather than absolutes. Dominic pressed a kiss to her temple. You save lives through medicine. I protect what's mine through less conventional means. Both are valid forms of caring for people. That's a convenient rationalization for criminal activity. Perhaps, but it's also true. He turned her in his lap to face him directly. I'm not a good man, Maya, but I'm good to you. And I'm very good at ensuring you're safe to save all those lives your ethics professor values. She kissed him rather than arguing, a tactical retreat that had become their pattern. Some arguments couldn't be won through logic. Some relationships existed outside neat moral categories. Some love stories started with poison and murder and somehow became real anyway. I have surgery observation tomorrow, she murmured against his lips. Need to be at the hospital by 5 a.m. Miguel will drive you, and stay until your shift ends. I don't need a bodyguard for hospital rotations. Humor me. Dominic's smile held affection and implacability combined. Richard Marchant's associates haven't all been arrested yet, and you remain the witness who ensured his conviction. Maya sighed, accepting the security she'd stopped fighting 3 months ago. Fine, but Miguel has to wear scrubs. He's too intimidating in a suit. I'll let him know. They returned to their respective work. Maya memorizing drug interactions while Dominic reviewed shipping manifests that probably contained legitimate cargo mixed with items better left unexamined. The comfortable domesticity of it felt surreal and exactly right. Routine built from extraordinary circumstances. Her phone buzzed with a text from her study group, asking if she'd made flashcards for the upcoming exam. She responded affirmatively, not mentioning that those flashcards had been created in a crime boss's library while his security team rotated positions outside. Some details were better left unexplained. Thank you, Maya said suddenly. Dominic looked up, eyebrow raised. For? For being catastrophically terrible at maintaining professional distance, for protecting me even when I didn't want protection, for being honest about what you are, rather than pretending to be something safe. She smiled. For making me feel essential instead of useful. His expression softened in the way it only did for her. Thank you for circling 3 words on a receipt and changing everything. For being brave enough to interfere when anyone else would have looked away. For choosing this, he gestured between them. despite every logical reason not to. Logic is overrated, Maya decided, spoken like a scientist. Dominic's laugh was genuine, unguarded. I'm corrupting you. Or I'm civilizing you. Hard to tell which. Both, probably. He returned to his paperwork with a contentment that still surprised Maya when she noticed it. The feared gentleman of New Orleans, domesticated by a medical student who'd saved his ex-fiancée's life. Almost domesticated, Maya corrected mentally, watching him sign what were some definitely not entirely legal documents with practiced efficiency. Some edges remained sharp, some darkness stayed untouched. She'd chosen to love him anyway, not despite what he was, but with full acknowledgement of it. The rain started around midnight, that particular New Orleans downpour that made the whole city smell like wet jasmine and history. Maya fell asleep in Dominic's bed with pharmacology notes scattered across expensive sheets, his arm heavy and reassuring across her waist. She dreamed of champagne bubbles moving wrong, of circled words that changed destinies, of 3 simple notations that had led her here: to safety found in danger, to love discovered through tragedy, to a future built on the foundation of noticing what everyone else missed. When she woke to her alarm at 4:30 a.m., Dominic was already awake, coffee prepared exactly how she liked it, Miguel waiting downstairs in scrubs that made him look slightly less terrifying. "Save some lives today," Dominic said, kissing her goodbye at the door with the casual intimacy of routine. "Try not to break too many laws," Maya countered. "No promises." She climbed into the car where Miguel waited patiently, her medical bag packed with texts and stethoscope, and the certain knowledge that someone dangerous loved her enough to let her be exactly who she was. The hospital emerged from pre-dawn darkness, its emergency entrance glowing with harsh fluorescent promise. Maya stepped out of the Mercedes into her real life, the one that included both ER rotations and Mafia security, both saving lives and loving someone who occasionally ended them, both medical ethics and moral complexity that no textbook could adequately address. "See you at 3, Miguel said, already scanning the parking lot for threats that probably didn't exist. "See you at 3, Maya confirmed, shouldering her bag. Inside, the ER hummed with the familiar chaos of morning shift change, overdoses and car accidents, domestic violence and drug interactions, the endless parade of human suffering that she'd chosen to stand witness to. A nurse waved greeting. A resident asked about the upcoming exam. A patient needed assessment. Maya Torres, medical student and witness to attempted murder and girlfriend of New Orleans' most notorious criminal, stepped into the controlled emergency and did what she'd always done, noticed what others missed, acted when others hesitated, saved who she could save. The champagne bubbles had led her here, the circled words had changed everything, and somehow, impossibly, she'd found exactly where she belonged. In the space between saving lives and loving dangerously, between medicine and mayhem, between who she'd planned to be and who she'd actually become. Dr. Maya Torres adjusted her white coat, the MD after her name still feeling surreal despite 6 months of residency. The ER attending had just commended her on a complex poisoning case. Oleander, identified from symptom patterns before the talk screen confirmed it. Some skills became permanent. Her phone buzzed during her break. "Dinner at home tonight?" "I'm cooking." "Well, the chef is cooking. But I'm supervising." Maya smiled, typing back. "Your supervision usually involves drinking wine while criticizing his technique. It's called quality control. See you at 8? 7:30. I have an early shift tomorrow. 7:30. I'll try not to be too disappointed by the abbreviated evening." She pocketed her phone as trauma alerts sounded. Car accident inbound, multiple casualties. Maya ran toward the ambulance bay with her team, adrenaline and training taking over, her mind already cataloging treatments and triage protocols. This was her life now. ER doctor by day, returning each night to the Garden District mansion where Dominic waited with dinner and security briefings, and the comfortable partnership they'd built from impossible beginnings. Her colleagues knew she was dating someone in business. Her family had stopped asking uncomfortable questions after meeting Dominic's carefully curated public persona. Only Detective Chen knew the full truth, and she'd long ago accepted that some relationships existed outside neat legal categories. The accident victims were stabilized, treated, transferred to surgery or intensive care. Maya scrubbed out, exhausted and satisfied in equal measure, then headed for the staff locker room where Miguel waited to drive her home. "Big day, Doc?" he asked, holding the car door. "Standard chaos. You?" "Quiet. Boss is in a good mood. Makes my job easier." At the mansion, Dominic met her at the door, already pulling her into an embrace before she'd fully stepped inside. "Rough shift?" "Nothing I couldn't handle." Maya leaned into him, letting the day's tension drain. "Though we had an oleander poisoning, made me think of that night. The night you saved a life and accidentally acquired a criminal boyfriend?" His smile was affectionate. "Seems to have worked out reasonably well." "Reasonably," Maya agreed, letting him lead her toward the dining room where elaborate dinner settings suggested the chef had outdone himself. "Though my ethics professor still emails occasionally asking if I've reconsidered my relationship choices." "What do you tell him?" "That I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be." She kissed him softly. Catastrophically terrible decisions and all. They ate dinner discussing their respective days, Maya's cases and Dominic's business negotiations that she didn't examine too closely. They'd found their balance over 3 years, boundaries that let her maintain medical ethics while accepting his moral flexibility, love that existed in the gradient space between absolutes. After dinner, they sat in the library where they'd first kissed, where she'd first agreed to help him investigate a murder, where so much of their unlikely relationship had unfolded. "I have something for you," Dominic said, producing a small box that made Maya's heart stutter. "Dominic, it's not what you think." "Well, it is, but not yet." He opened the box to reveal a silver keychain, elegant, simple, engraved with her initials. "For your new car, the one I'm buying you now that you're a doctor with irregular hours and security concerns." Maya laughed despite herself. "You can't buy me a car." "I absolutely can. It's armored, has GPS tracking, and Miguel has vetted the mechanical team." His expression turned serious. "I know you value independence, but indulge my need to ensure you're safe between hospital shifts and home." She accepted the keychain, feeling its weight. "This feels familiar." "Because 3 years ago I gave you a different piece of silver. A business card that you were supposed to use for emergencies." His hand covered hers. "You've never called that number once, never asked for help even when you needed it." "This keychain is insurance. Not for emergencies, but for every day. For coming home safely after shifts. For letting me protect you even when you don't think you need protection." "You're still terrible at boundaries," Maya murmured, "and you're still stubborn about accepting help." He pulled her close. "We're well matched in our disasters." "We really are." Later, as they prepared for bed with the comfortable routine of established couplehood, Maya studied her reflection in the bathroom mirror. Dr. Torres, ER resident, girlfriend of a crime boss, woman who'd built an extraordinary life from a single moment of noticing poisoned champagne. "Do you ever regret it?" Dominic asked from the doorway. "That night at Laveau's? If you could go back and not notice those bubbles, not circle those words, would you?" Maya considered the question seriously. The danger she'd faced, the fear she'd endured, the ways her life had deviated from every plan she'd made. "No," she said finally. I wouldn't change anything. Because noticing led me here. To you. To this life that's nothing like what I imagined and somehow exactly what I needed. Dominic crossed to her, wrapping his arms around her waist from behind, his chin resting on her shoulder as they both studied their reflection. The ER doctor and the gentleman criminal, the woman who saved lives and the man who ended them, the impossible partnership that had started with 3 circled words. I love you, he said quietly. Catastrophically, dangerously, probably inadvisably, but completely. I love you too. Maya turned in his arms, despite every logical reason not to. Because of every illogical reason to. Completely. They kissed with the certainty of 3 years and the excitement of 3 minutes, the balance they'd found between passion and partnership, between danger and devotion. Outside, Miguel completed his security rounds. The chef cleaned the kitchen. The city hummed with its usual chaos of beauty and corruption. And in the Garden District mansion, 2 people who should never have worked somehow did. Proof that the most extraordinary love stories sometimes started with the smallest observations. Poisoned champagne bubbles moving wrong. 3 words circled on a receipt. A waitress brave enough to interfere. A crime boss honorable enough to protect her. And a future built from the wreckage of attempted murder, transformed through persistence and choice, and the stubborn determination to make impossible things real. If this emotional journey kept you hooked until the very end, smash that like button and subscribe for more captivating stories. Comment below and let me know, Team Maya or Team Dominic, what would you have done in her situation? Your support means the world and helps me bring you more stories like this. Thank you so much for watching until the end. If you love this story, check out the other videos on your screen now. I think you'll really enjoy them. See you in the next story.